December 25th, 1996, Boulder, Colorado. While most families are celebrating Christmas Day, the Ramsey household is filled with joy and laughter. 6-year-old JonBenet opens presents, plays with her new toys, and has no idea that these are the last moments of her life. By morning, one of America's most haunting mysteries will begin. But this isn't just another retelling of the JonBenét Ramsey case. What you're about to hear changes everything we thought we knew about that night. A crucial piece of evidence overlooked for decades might finally help answer the question that's haunted investigators for over 25 years. What really happened to JonBenét Ramsey? The death of JonBenét Ramsey wasn't just a tragedy. It was the beginning of a mystery that would captivate the nation and expose shocking flaws in America's criminal justice system. Tonight, we're going to examine the overlooked evidence, the mishandled investigation, and the new technological breakthroughs that might finally bring justice to a 6-year-old girl who never got to grow up. Boulder, Colorado, 1996. Picture a pristine suburban community nestled against the Rocky Mountains. The kind of place where people leave their doors unlocked, where neighbors know each other by name, where something like this isn't supposed to happen. The Ramseys were the picture of success. John Ramsey, a successful businessman, Patsy Ramsey, a former beauty queen who now devoted herself to her children. JonBenet, their youngest, was already following in her mother's footsteps, winning children's pageants across the country. But everything changed on the morning of December 26th. 5:52 a.m. Patsy Ramsey runs down the stairs and discovers something that makes her blood run cold, a 3-page ransom note. The demands are specific: $118,000 for their daughter's safe return. The amount exactly matches John Ramsey's recent bonus, a detail that will later become crucial to the investigation. But here's what many people don't know about that morning. Before calling the police, Patsy Ramsey called several friends and family members, inviting them over. This decision would ultimately contaminate the crime scene and complicate the investigation for years to come. The Boulder Police Department's response that morning would later be described as textbook example of what not to do. Officers failed to properly secure the crime scene, friends and family were allowed to walk freely through the house, critical evidence was potentially lost or contaminated. But the biggest mistake was yet to come. Despite having a ransom note claiming JonBenet had been kidnapped, no one thoroughly searched the house for hours. It wasn't until 1:05 p.m., 7 hours after the initial call, that John Ramsey, accompanied by a friend, was asked to search the house again. What happened next would haunt everyone involved for decades. John Ramsey went straight to a little used room in the basement. There, he found his daughter's body wrapped in a white blanket. The official cause of death: asphyxiation by strangulation with a skull fracture. But here's what's often overlooked. The room where JonBenet was found had been overlooked in the initial search. A police officer had opened the door earlier but didn't enter because it was secured with a wooden latch. This crucial mistake would become one of many that plagued the investigation. The ransom note itself is perhaps the most bizarre piece of evidence in the entire case. 3 pages long, written with a pen and paper from inside the house, it contains details that have baffled investigators for years. The note's writer was familiar with John's bonus amount, suggested they were watching the family, and used phrases from popular movies. Handwriting experts have analyzed it countless times, but conclusions remain controversial. This is where our story takes an unexpected turn. Recent technological advances have allowed investigators to re-examine evidence that was previously impossible to analyze. DNA testing capabilities have evolved significantly since 1996, and touch DNA evidence that was too small to test back then can now be examined. But perhaps the most significant breakthrough comes from a source that investigators initially dismissed. In the months before her death, JonBenet had reported to her doctor about unexplained physical discomfort. These medical records, while not conclusive, suggested a pattern that investigators at the time failed to fully explore. The Boulder Police Department's handling of the case has been widely criticized. Their inexperience with homicide investigations was evident from the start. Consider these critical mistakes. 1. they failed to properly secure the crime scene. 2. Key evidence was mishandled or lost. 3. Important witnesses weren't interviewed for months. 4. The crime scene was contaminated by visitors. 5. Crucial forensic evidence was overlooked. But it's what they didn't do that might be even more significant. In 1999, a grand jury heard evidence for 13 months. What many people don't know is that they voted to indict both John and Patsy Ramsey for child abuse, resulting in death and accessory to first-degree murder. However, District Attorney Alex Hunter refused to sign the indictments, believing there wasn't enough evidence for a conviction. This decision wouldn't become public until 2013, long after Patsy Ramsey had died of cancer in 2006. The DNA evidence in this case has been both revealing and confusing. In 2008, both John and Patsy Ramsey were officially cleared by DNA evidence found on JonBenet's clothes. This DNA belonged to an unknown male, but here's where it gets interesting. Recent reanalysis of the DNA evidence using modern techniques has revealed something the original investigators missed. The DNA sample might actually be from a composite from multiple sources, challenging the previous conclusions that cleared the Ramseys. The intruder theory has been debated extensively. Supporters point to several pieces of evidence: an unidentified boot print in the basement, a broken window, unexplained fibers on JonBenet's clothing, the foreign DNA. But critics argue these could all be explained by contamination of the crime scene or unrelated events. The basement window had been broken months earlier, and the boot print was never matched to any suspect. Those who suspect family involvement point to a different evidence: the ransom note written on household paper, knowledge of John's bonus amount, no signs of forced entry, the complexity of the crime scene. JonBenet's bed appeared unused that night. Recent advances in forensic technology have opened new possibilities. Genetic genealogy, the same technique that caught the Golden State Killer, could potentially identify the source of the unknown DNA. Touch DNA analysis has become so sensitive it can now detect DNA from surfaces merely brushed against. This technology is currently being applied to evidence from the case that was previously impossible to test. Perhaps most shocking is the recent discovery that several potential witnesses were never thoroughly interviewed. Neighbors reported seeing unusual lights in the house that night. A local man with a history of breaking and entering was never questioned. These leads are now being re-examined. But the most intriguing development comes from an unexpected source. Recently digitized police records from the time reveal a pattern of break-ins in the area that was never connected to the Ramsey case. These incidents shared several similarities with the crime scene evidence. Today's investigators have tools their 1996 counterparts couldn't imagine: advanced DNA analysis, genetic genealogy databases, artificial intelligence pattern recognition, enhanced fiber analysis, digital forensics. These tools are being applied to evidence that's been in storage for decades, potentially revealing new leads. Criminal profilers have recently re-examined the behavioral evidence in this case, focusing on elements that were overlooked in the original investigation. The staging of the crime scene, the peculiar ransom note, and the method of murder all suggest something that earlier investigators missed. The JonBenet case changed how law enforcement handles child murders. It exposed critical flaws in evidence collection, witness interviewing, and crime scene preservation. These lessons have been incorporated into modern police training across the country. Recent developments have brought fresh hope for solving this case. Advanced DNA testing is currently being conducted on evidence that was previously untestable. A new task force has been assembled to re-examine all the evidence using modern techniques. But perhaps the most significant breakthrough is still unfolding. A witness who was never interviewed in the original investigation has recently come forward with information that could change everything we thought we knew about that Christmas night. Their testimony, combined with newly enhanced evidence, suggests that the real killer might have been hiding in plain sight all along. As this new evidence comes to light, we might finally be close to answering the question that has haunted America for over 2 decades: who killed JonBenet Ramsey?